Welcome to Waypoints, the podcast of fly fishing travel. With helpful travel tips, news and events, destination profiles, great stories, and expert advice from seasoned and experienced traveling anglers, this is your backstage pass to the world of fishing travel. Waypoints is fueled by adventure and brought to you by Yellow Dog Flyfishing, a hands-on specialty travel and booking company that delivers the industry's very best insider knowledge, logistical support, and trip preparation. Freshwater or saltwater, international or domestic, Yellow Dog has you covered. And now your host, Yellow Dog founder and director, Jim Klug.
My guest today is Jeff Currier, a man who has been working in the industry and fly fishing the world for close to 40 years. He began his career working behind the counter at a fly shop in Jackson, Wyoming, and since then has gone on to fish, explore, and travel the planet in search of anything that'll eat a fly. Jeff has become a well-known name on the speaking and consumer show circuit, and his fishing travel blog is followed by thousands. He's also established himself as one of the most recognized personalities in the game, and following in the footsteps of some of the true angling legends, he's become an incredible ambassador for the sport of fly fishing. Jeff, welcome to Waypoints. It's been a long time coming to finally get you to sit down and do an episode.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It's good to finally be here.
Well, we appreciate the time, and I understand that before the end of this program, you're going to reveal Currier's secret to catching huge fish and living the perfect life. So for all of our listeners, you have that to look forward to before the end of the show, right?
All right, I'll do that.
All right.
Why not?
It's going to be like a Geraldo moment. We're going to open the vault.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's start off talking about this mission that you've been on for the past 30 years, a mission to fish and explore the world. To date, Jeff, you visited and fished 63 different countries. And as I understand it, you've caught more than 400 species of fish on the fly. Do you think that this could be some sort of record?
I doubt there's too many people that have caught that many different species on fly. In fact, I'd say probably none. But, maybe we don't know. As far as 63 countries go, yeah, that's a lot too. But I don't know. There's some fast coming anyway.
Well, what's really cool is, I mean, you've recorded all these. You've kept this fishing journal of every species you've caught on the fly, from big to little, known to unknown, just incidental bycatches. This has always been kind of your thing.
Yeah, I have. I mean, even when I was a kid, I kept track of every fish I caught growing up in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Used to write them on my calendar, even just every day exactly what I caught. And, now I guess the last 10 years with my blog, I've documented every single day and every fish I've caught, literally right there in the internet on my website. And you said mission. Didn't start as a mission. It's turned into this thing, and it's incredible. I really enjoy fish.
You're like Forrest Gump when he decides to go jogging. He just doesn't stop. Right?
Yeah, I don't see myself stopping.
Well, I mean, is there a goal in mind? I mean, is there a number you have in mind, or is it just going to take you where it takes you?
It's going to take me where it takes me. There's a couple fish that I haven't caught that I'd like to catch. And when I say a couple, I can only think of two real fast there. But when I catch those, I'll still, enjoy catching weird stuff, odd stuff. I'm an ichthyologist in disguise, I guess.
Well, we're going to talk more about that later in the program today. But, we hear the terms trout bum or fish bum. They seem to be used all the time these days. And to me, a fish bum has always been a person who's spent decades living a certain lifestyle, prioritizing fishing, crafting their angling skills, essentially dedicating their entire life to the pursuit of fish. And this is not some simple hobbyist or a second-year angler who's kind of figuring things out. This is something much more than that. How old would you say a true fish bum actually has to be? Are there any requirements in your mind?
I would say that you have to fish more than you work for like 10 straight years. Something like that. That's about how I started.
Fish more than you work. Well, that's pretty good. I mean, do you get a membership card or something in the mail?
No, I think your car that's falling apart and your shack that you live in, that's pretty much your membership right there.
That says it all. You think in this day and age it's a dying breed to meet the fish bum or the trout bum?
I think there might be some up and coming. There's definitely some people very serious about their fishing. I don't know if it's I mean, like me, I had nothing when I started being a fish bum. It wasn't like, I mean, I was wondering where my next meal and my gas was going to come from. I think there's that type of fish bum maybe has gone away a little, but there's definitely people that they can fish. You know what I mean?
Well, let's talk about Jeff Currier's journey for a minute here. How did you decide that your career was going to be angling explorer and world traveler? How did this come to be?
Well, it wasn't a planned thing. You know, there's no formula for this. Funny because I get asked that all the time because especially like the younger generation, the 20-year-olds at 30, they're like, hey, I want to be like you. What do I do? Well, I didn't plan it. I just, after college, I was tired and I said, you know, I'm going to go fishing for a couple of years and go to Jackson Hole, ski and fish. And I worked in a very prominent fly shop. And next thing you know, it was a year-round job. And then it was, full-time job. And it just happened. And I guess because Jackson Hole is a place where there are a lot of travelers, I watched people come to the store, buy new rods to go to New Zealand or Argentina or saltwater, and I was a little jealous, and I said, I'm going to make that happen for me too.
Whatever it takes.
Exactly.
Well, you grew up in New Hampshire, right?
Yeah, mixed New Hampshire and Massachusetts.
Well, how did you first find your way to fishing in the very beginning? I mean, did you have a specific person that introduced you to the sport or that got you started?
Yeah, my mother's father actually had a outdoor shop in Massachusetts, and he was Orvis endorsed. And funny thing, my dad worked for him, and that's how he met my mom. So my dad was a big fisherman and hunter. And long story short, my dad got me into fishing.
So that actually, you said you went to Jackson, you worked in a store there. That makes you kind of a third generation shop rat.
Yeah, retail has been the family thing for a long time.
That's pretty cool. Not a lot of people can say that. Not a lot of families can say that. Well, as a young angler, Jeff, I mean, who are the people in the sport, in the industry, aside from your dad and your grandfather, right? But who was it that you looked up to when you were getting going?
I'd say a couple of the first people that would have been like Gary LaFontaine and Mike Lawson. I was very fortunate to travel around with those two and Jack Dennis when they were doing shows and they were doing seminars. I kind of helped them carry the luggage, and those guys were an inspiration for me. It looked like their life was fun. And I just never, I was starting my saltwater career. And I remember Gary LaFontaine watched me at a show a guy how to rig up knots and this and that for a tarpon trip. And Gary goes, he just looks at me in the eye, he goes, you should write a book about that. And I looked at him like his hair was on fire. Like, me? I mean, you guys write books, not me. About 2 weeks later, I started my book.
Well, hanging out with LaFontaine and Lawson and Jack Dennis, I mean, that's quite an apprenticeship. Those guys were legendary. Still are, for those that are still there. Same question, but how about now? Fast forward all these years. I mean, are there any people in the industry that you still kind of look up to or get inspiration from that are out there and still doing it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd say Mike Lawson, there's one right there. He toned it off and he's fishing more and hunting. I respect that. That's smart of him. And then this weekend in Denver, across from my booth, there's Dave Whitlock at 80-something years old, and he's still doing the art and all that good stuff. That looks fun, too. So I'm going to try and find, like, the happy medium in between.
Well, you talked about, young kids that say, hey, I want to do what Jeff Currier does. I want to go explore the world. I want to fish the world. I want to do what Jeff does for a living. What's your advice to those young people today that kind of want to ruin their lives and follow in the footsteps of so many of us that have made fly fishing a career? What do you tell those guys?
I tell them to
and girls, I would say.
Yeah, first thing I say is slow down. It doesn't happen overnight. So you're not just going to, walk into a fly shop, work a week, and be hosting a Belize trip. You got to work your way up. You got to start at the bottom, and be nice to people. I think that's one of the best things for me is I fished hard, so I learned fast. I paid attention, and then I shared my information with other people. I was the guy that loved being behind the counter in the fly shop. I actually didn't like guiding that much, but when someone came to the fly shop and they knew nothing and needed help, I enjoyed giving it to them. And people remember that stuff, and next thing you know, one of those people you helped a few years back has a ranch and a private trout stream, and they come and invite you to that. That would be like where it begins, and then it's a guy buys a house in Belize, and next thing you know, in New Zealand, it's just, it was a patient process, but all of a sudden now it's blown up. It's pretty cool.
Well, I like your advice on be nice. I think that's just an overlooked, very basic element these days. And I have to say, in the 30 years we've known each other, I've never heard anyone say, oh, that Currier, what an asshole.
Thank God.
just doesn't happen. But, you've created this lifestyle, Jeff, that basically includes wearing a lot of different hats at any given time. I mean, obviously, you're doing a lot of your travels and you're exploring the world, but you're also a well-known artist. You're an author. You're a professional speaker. Your wife, Granny, tells me that sometimes you're an underwear model, more as kind of a hobby. Right. But you have a lot of different irons in the fire these days. Talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, you do wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the other thing. If you're going to make a living as a professional fly fisherman, you're not going to do it with any one thing. So you got to do a lot of things. I'm very lucky that I was able to mix my art into this. So, in the summertime when I'm not getting paid to be on the road speaking, I can do some paintings. Well,
I mean, let's talk about your artwork because in all honesty, I mean, it's really damn good and it's kind of blown up. You got a lot of people that follow you, your art. How did you first kind of figure out that you were an artist other than, doodling in high school and kind of daydreaming about, fishing? At what point did you say, hey, I can actually do this for real and become an artist? And really kind of what mediums do you typically focus on? Do you have a favorite or what is it that you love about your artwork?
Yeah, that goes back to Gary LaFontaine again. After I wrote my book, Gary actually was the first one to read it. And he said, I love it. He goes, now we need to get someone to illustrate it. And I said, what does that entail? And he goes, well, you're going to have to hire somebody and blah, blah, blah. And already I was like, that was out the window, not an option. And I knew I had some art skills because I did a lot of detention in high school for drawing on the desk. So I illustrated my own book. And I was almost a little embarrassed, nervous about some of the drawings when I showed Gary. And he's like, this is absolutely beautiful. He goes, and I was like, really? So maybe I am an artist. And I went on to illustrate my other book and other people's books. And now I get stuff in galleries. It's weird. Well,
and when creating art, you've been doing it for several decades now. You're obviously inspired by the travels and the places that fly fishing takes you. When I've traveled with you in the past, I mean, you're constantly drawing and recording stuff and kind of taking it all in.
Yeah, I'm always, people are like, why are you taking a picture of that fish's tail? Or why the close-up of the eyes? Because later on, I know I'm going to paint that fish. And you asked me about my medium. I'm a watercolor with pen and ink.
Nice. Well, you've done some great stuff. And anybody that's come to visit you at one of the consumer shows, they see your table of just, amazing artwork. And I know you've developed quite a following in that. So that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Like you said, it all comes back to having a lot of different irons in the fire if you're going to do this professionally.
That's right.
Well, you've also been active with Team USA, and that's our competitive national fly fishing team. I think a lot of our listeners don't know what nationally competitive fly fishing is and how it works. Tell us a little bit about that and what you've done with Team USA.
Yeah, so in 1996 or 95, the World Championships of Fly Fishing were held in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I lived there. I didn't even know such a thing existed, but I got asked to help with it, not fishing it, but help with some of the teams and this and that, and turned out to be an absolutely amazing event. I just watched the Europeans destroy the American team and the Canadian team and all. It was fascinating to me that there are anglers out there that are so much better than us. And because the U.S. team got slaughtered, I investigated how I would get on the team. And there was no sponsorship. I think that trip was to Poland for the following year. And they said, if you want to be in the team, you can. It's going to cost you $5,000. I'm like, okay, I'm out. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, they couldn't put together a team for Poland. And the captain, who has plenty of funds, he said, Currier, were you serious about wanting to be in the team? I said, yeah, until it was $5,000. He goes, I got you covered. If you can come and do well, then you'll be on the team. And it'll be the beginning of a real Team USA. And I went to Poland and did well. And, for the next 5 or 6 years, I was able to compete for Team USA. And now I'm back on the old man masters now that I'm in my 50s. And it's pretty fun to be back in the circuit. I'm fishing against all my old European buddies now that we were once men head to head. Now it's kind of friendly. It's kind of cool.
And how does a competition work? When you say go to Poland and you're fishing in the World Championships, there's teams from all different countries. And of course, if you're not aware of this, a lot of people say, oh, well, fly fishing, USA, clearly we must be the best, right? We must be heads and tails above the rest of the world. But that's not really the case.
Not so much. So if there's 5 people on Team USA, which there is, you fly to a country, you're going to compete against 35 other countries. So everybody on Team USA draws a letter. So 5 people, A, B, C, D, and E. So if I draw E, so does somebody from every other team. So there are 34 other E's out there. Well, we get on a bus and we go to a river that's been broke down to 35 beats, and we go fish it for 3 hours. Whoever catches the most fish wins that beat. And if you win, you get a 1. If you're second place, you get a 2, and blah, blah. If you don't catch a single fish, you score 35. So first thing you want to do is catch a fish. And that sounds easy because we're Americans and you can catch fish on almost any river around here fast. Some of those tough rivers in Czech Republic or Spain is not that easy. So you do that 5 times, all 5 people on the team, the scores are added up, and there you go. And we're actually doing quite good. We, the Masters anyway, we won the silver medal in South Africa last year about this time.
Nice. So when the Russians show up, are they like blood doping and performance enhanced fly fishing, all jacked up?
Actually, I think they are.
Tough to beat those Russians, for sure. Well, when you travel with the national team, of course, you have a uniform. How do you feel about wearing a tie and jacket? I mean, doesn't this clash with kind of the dirtbag angler lifestyle a little bit?
It does, and it's actually been a conversation many times because most of the teams have loosened up. They might have a cool shirt that looks like their flag, but we're still wearing the blue jackets and a U.S. tie, flag tie. But you know what? I don't dress up very often. So
that must be
cool.
The only time of the year you actually put a tie on is when you're doing team stuff.
Yeah, our team captain still ties it for me. I'm not kidding.
Well, so I asked this same question, and I want to change gears just a little bit. But when Brian O'Keefe sat with us on an episode, I asked him this, and I'm going to ask you the same thing. It seems like our industry now has this army of young fly anglers turned, quote, content producers or Insta-famous personalities, all seem to be well-armed with GoPros, DSLRs, a passport, and plenty of plane tickets. How has this changed the perception of our sport, and what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, it's a tough one for me because people are always saying, how come you don't do more or this, more of that? And it's just not my thing. I think I started my Instagram account about less than a year and a half ago, and I'm a little bit into it. It's kind of cool. I like it because I can see what other people are doing because that is of interest, but I don't get that excited about posting my own stuff. I'm trying to get more because I know it's important, but...
Well, I mean, this explosion of media content has created, a lot of increased exposure for our sport, for sure. I mean, do you think this is a good thing? I mean, what are the pros and cons in your mind of social media as it relates to fly fishing?
I think it's I think it's a good thing because it's getting more people into the sport. I think that there's definitely a little bit too much rah and less conservation angle in it. I'd rather see a little more of that now and then, but it is good that we're getting people in the sport because it makes people aware of, the fish that are out there. We got to protect them in these beautiful places around the world.
Well, and you've done a good job of somewhat embracing these new platforms. I mean, you have social media accounts now, as you said. You've got a great website, and you've got one of the most active blogs in all of fly fishing. I mean, you've got a huge following on your blog. But the thing that you've always brought to the table, and the one thing that I think you're recognized for, Jeff, is really your humility and your legitimacy. And you've had to earn that. I mean, you can't just wake up one morning and decide, hey, I'm going to be a fly fishing superstar. Here's my social media account, hashtag witness me. I'm out there. I mean, there's no kit to buy that legitimacy or instantaneously earn it. I mean, you've got to put a lot of years into this.
Yeah, I think to do it the right way you do. But I mean, I have seen some people pop up out of nowhere and then they're boom in like 3 weeks. You're like, holy cow, who is this person? I've been to 63 countries. They went to 60 this year,
Yeah.
But, yeah, it takes a long time to really be legitimate. The people I just joked about there, they don't last long either because this is not easy.
It's not easy, and I think that people that love this sport for all the right reasons, they recognize that legitimacy. They want to have industry names. They want to have personalities, and I'm not going to use the word celebrities because I think that never really fits with our sport. But there needs to be some names and some leaders in this sport. I think you've definitely, without question, have become one of those. But it takes some time, and that again, that's earned. I think people can see through the BS. I think they recognize that authenticity and legitimacy. It's something we've touched on a lot on this show, but it really is something that people expect out of the sport. Yeah. Well, you've been to a lot of remote and out of the way places while chasing fish. Having experienced numerous amounts of challenging travel situations, what advice would you give someone about travel safety and expectations when you're out, and especially out of the country?
I always tell people, like if I'm hosting a trip for Yellow Dog, is, I talk to my guests and I say, let's have a couple of goals here. so you don't get out of bounds. Like, for instance, first time somebody goes to Belize and they've never saltwater fished, they know about tarpon bonefish permit, and they go there and they're like, I want to catch a tarpon bonefish or permit, or it's going to break my heart. And that's not reasonable. It really isn't. It could happen, but you need to go there and, okay, I want to be a good bone fisherman when I'm done with my first trip. And maybe I jump a tarpon, maybe I get a permit, but I'm not going to go there and be disappointed if I don't. And then as far as running into travel hazards, you better give yourself a little extra time. And I've already used the word patience, but it's a big thing in our sport in a lot of places, and travel is one of them.
Well, and safety obviously, becomes more of a concern these days with all the craziness that's going on out there in the world. One of the things we also have talked a lot about in a number of different episodes in this show is having a plan, being safe. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I probably just started even thinking about safety, and just recently, I guess I went many years without worrying about that. But yeah, it is important. And I know it, as we have guests, that's the first thing they want to know. It's like, we're going to go through Dubai? Is that safe? Which makes me laugh because I think it's the safest place on the planet. But yeah, I know what you mean. And, you got to focus on that stuff a little bit these days.
Well, how about trip preparation when you're headed somewhere? I mean, do you still practice when it comes to trip prep? I mean, for instance, do you practice your casting on a regular basis? Is there such a thing as destination training for anglers?
Yeah, I don't really train for casting or anything, but I try to get my body in shape. So, I work out pretty much year round, but if I got a really specific trip, like I was just recently in Oman, and I knew I was going to be in Oman for a few days towards the end of my canceled Seychelles trip, unfortunately. But, you're out in a boat in big waves. So I worked on my body core for, 40 days before the trip, so I can stand in front of the boat and cast instead of hanging off the bow or leaning against a roll bar or something.
And that worked. You didn't end up cracking halfway through the trip.
Nope. And so far I haven't cracked on a trip yet.
Well, I've been with you on a number of these adventures in pretty wild places. And I'll tell you, Currier is someone that will fish until he drops. I mean, I've seen you almost, half dead after like, a 10-day, 2-week fishing trip where you're, on the water casting 14 hours a day. And some of our crew will pull me aside and they'll say, man, Jeff doesn't look so good. Is he okay?
Well, I remember the one where you guys, we thought we were going back to rest in India. And I'm like, no, I just saw my series on the other side of the river. The problem is we got to walk 3 miles up, cross the bridge, and then back down. Let's go. I remember you and Chris were looking at me like, no.
Well, it was only like 115 degrees outside too.
It was hot.
Well,
it was hot.
There's been some good adventures for sure. But one of our team members at Yellow Dog wanted me to specifically ask you this question, Jeff. So tell us this. You pull off probably more trips a year than just about anybody, and you've mastered, the art of stretching funds and allocating them efficiently and effectively in order to do a lot of travel and go a lot of places. That said, what are 2 expenses or elements of a destination trip where you never cut corners no matter what?
My airfare. I'm a Delta guy and I always want to fly Delta. Sometimes it's more expensive, but I know if I have a problem, I can check with them, and they also give me a good seat all the time. That's important as I get older. And then the other thing is, I used those trips when I was really young. I would literally go 3 days with a loaf of bread. And I don't do that anymore. I always try to have one good meal a day on any trip, whether it's and usually it's dinner, fish hard all day. And at the end of the day, I want to treat myself to something good.
There you go. Like some fresh warthog or whatever it might be.
Warthog is absolutely delicious. It's the kudu that's not so good.
The kudu on day 8 of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah, for sure. Well, with each of these episodes, Jeff, I like to do kind of a series of rapid fire questions that I'm going to throw at you. The kind of things that you've probably been asked a bunch of times in a bunch of different contexts, but we're going to jam all of this into one lightning round, and I'm going to hit you with this. You got to do quick answers on this, all right?
Yeah, here we go.
Here we go. Ready? Favorite species?
Smallmouth bass.
Most unusual catch or the oddest fish you've ever caught?
Ooh, horned surgeonfish.
Where was that?
Seychelles.
Horned surgeonfish in the Seychelles.
I don't even know if that's what it is. I can picture the fish. I'd have to look at my species list, but it blew my mind. It almost hurt me.
You got to be careful where you hold them, right?
Yeah.
So what, in your opinion, is the next frontier in fly fishing?
Ooh, I hope that it's Central Africa, but we'll see.
Still a little dodgy, but opening up a bit every day.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Is there a person in fly fishing that you'd love to have a beer with but haven't yet?
Yeah, maybe Charlie Blackmon, baseball player. And I know he fishes because I know friends that have met him, but I'm ready to have a beer with Charlie too.
There you go. Charlie, if you're listening, give Jeff a call.
That's right.
There we go. So you have one choice. All right. Speaking of baseball, catching a world record permit or another Chicago Cubs World Series win.
Well, I'd have to go with the permit. I know that surprised you, but we got our World Series win 2 years ago, or before they won, I'd have taken the World Series.
But now you're good for another 80 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
They got their win for me.
All right. What's one place that you're dying to fish but have yet to go?
The Congo, DRC.
All right.
They got the Goliath tigerfish.
How about one place you've already fished and you want to go back and return more than anywhere else?
Whew. Boy, there's a lot of great places out there. It's been a long time. I have to lay out two. It's been a long time since I've been to New Zealand, and I went 5 straight years and absolutely loved it. It's been 20 years since I've been back, so I'm calling that hard. And then last year, one of the most interesting trips I've been on a long time was that trip to Cameroon, and I'm ready to go back and do that again.
Well, there we go. How about a fishery that you return to year after year that's just become a part of your angling DNA?
I would say my home waters, the Henry's Fork, the ranch to be specific, and Blackfoot Reservoir for carp. You know what? Actually, the place that really mean a lot to me like the last few years has been going back to New Hampshire and just fishing bluegill and pumpkin seed and smallies. It's been awesome.
Nice. And you mentioned the Henry's Fork and the ranch. When was the last time you missed an opener?
Last year I missed it.
For the first time in probably a bunch of years.
Yeah, I haven't missed too many, but I did do 25 straight, but the last 5 years I've missed 3 of them.
All right. Worst trip ever?
Nicaragua, 1993. El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras. It was a tough trip because it was a bad time to be in those countries, and we had so much rain that when I got home, my skin smelled sour, like sour clothes. It was brutal.
That's when you went down to chase the golden grapote, was that right?
Yeah, the golden grapote.
All right. One species of fish, aside from the golden grapote possibly, that you will never, ever fish for again. You've checked the box and you're just done.
Ooh, that's a quick question. That's a tough one.
It's kind of the idea of the lightning round, though. Got to put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything that I don't want to go catch again.
All right. Well, that's an answer in and of itself.
Okay.
So that's good. So next question. Rumor has it you recently upgraded from a vintage flip phone to a smartphone. Any truth to this?
Yeah, it's true. And I hate the damn thing. Other than the photography it takes, it's great. But this texting stuff, driving up here today, I almost went off the road like 4 times, like a teenage girl.
Well, one of my favorite stories is we were in the Bahamas a couple years ago together, and this very, very lovely elderly woman came to pick us up and meet us at the airport. And as she's gathering our crew and helping us gather our bags, she takes a call and she opens her purse and she pulls out like the original vintage flip phone, like Gordon Gekko area flip phone. And you look at her, you're like, I have the same phone. And you pulled your phone out and they completely matched. I was impressed by that.
That was pretty fun.
But now we're onto the smartphone. It's a new era.
Yeah, I'm learning. Yeah.
All right, last question in the lightning round. If someone in fly fishing were to narrate your life in the movie about Jeff Currier, the narrator from the fly fishing industry, who would it be?
Maybe like they don't have to be alive, do they?
No.
Yeah, I would say it'd be cool to have like somebody like Kirk Gowdy.
There
that would
you
be
go.
very cool.
There you go. All good answers. So thanks for that. We always have fun throwing those fast questions at you. Let's move on to this. You've seen a lot of the world, Jeff. You've traveled a lot of places. In your opinion, what are the biggest challenges that fly fishing faces moving forward? And how do you think anglers can do more to protect and enhance our sport and give back to the places where we travel to fish?
I think it's, the places we go, the local people look at us like, geez, what a waste of time to go out there and fish and catch these fish and let them go. So I think an area that we need to work on is teaching those people what we're doing and kind of get them on the same page so they can help protect what we all love.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you see fly fishing travel going in the next 10 years? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's going to continue to grow because of more people in the sport, and also, especially trout rivers are getting really crowded. So I see like the people that have gone on their Montana trip every year. You look at a guy that's 75. He's like, I've been going to Montana for the last 30 years, but I stopped 5 years ago because it's gotten busy. And now I've learned about bone fishing, or, I started going to Brazil and they have a new love. But basically that opens up the world. So I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
And, the world's getting smaller. It used to be a huge deal to plan a trip, for example, to the Yucatan or Belize. I mean, people would plan a year, 2 years out for that trip. And it was an adventurous, exotic, journey. And now it seems like it's not that big a deal for people to jump on a plane with, 4 days notice, go flats fishing in Belize, for example. It almost seems like, as the world's getting smaller, people are really pushing the envelope and they want to go further and more remote, out islands of the Seychelles, India, Tanzania for tigerfish, whatever it may be. But I mean, what do you think about that concept of the world just kind of getting smaller for anglers?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. I guess it was 2005 that Granny and I hitchhiked across Africa. And really, that was only 15 years ago. Nobody had ever really fished over there even. I couldn't get any info. That's why I just had to wing it. And but since then, my God, look at that. Now Africa's one of our hot spots at Yellow Dog. And we got, our great friends over there from South Africa that run what used to be Tourette, now African Waters. And I mean, there's so much good stuff that we're uncovering now. And that's what's really sucking people over there. Who doesn't look at an Instagram and see a tigerfish and be like, you know what? I need one of those. Or, a golden moss here. I got to go catch one of those. You'd have to be crazy not to.
No, for sure. And I guess that is one benefit of social media is it is opening the world of fishing in a lot of ways, combined with the fact that the world's getting smaller. And really the infrastructure in these places is getting so much better. I mean, you talked about our buddies, Rob and Keith at African Waters. I mean, these guys are just scratching the surface of opportunities over there.
They are. And then how about our untamed guys? You're in the boonies of Bolivia and you got good internet, better than what I have at my house sometimes. I can watch a Cubs game from Bolivia.
Well, let me ask you this too. In your opinion, I mean, is the notion that more anglers that participate in our sport, the better? I mean, does that resonate with you? Do you think that's true?
I mean, gosh, that's definitely something that I battle all the time. But, and I see these busy rivers, and I'm definitely guilty for part of that because I've been promoting it for 30-something years. But then circling back, yes, it is good because the people that don't fish, they don't give a darn about the environment. A lot of them don't. They may think they do, but they really don't. But people that are actually passionate about fishing, they do care. So the more people we get passionate about fishing, I think in the long run, we'll open up more things and save more places.
Yeah, I mean, it's important these days to have that connection, right? More so than just watching it on a screen or, flipping through an app. And this is a theme we talk about all the time. People speak out for and they fight for and they stand up for the things they care about. And they care about what they participate in, what's become a part of them. And certainly we all struggle with the concept of more anglers on the water, wherever that fishery may be. But at the end of the day, people are going to fight for and protect what they care about.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, there's an iconic Patagonia ad, and I wanted to ask you about this. It was an ad shot years ago by a well-known photographer named Andy Anderson, and it's a shot of you sleeping in a frozen sleeping bag, completely covered with frost. I think there's a little snow on the ground. You're on the ground next to your old white car. Some say this might be one of the best fishing ads ever shot. I would say maybe, the Scott Rods ad of the guy getting yanked off the jet ski would be up there as well. But tell us about this Andy Anderson photo and that moment and why, in your opinion, this image continues to resonate with so many anglers.
Well, I think that, every time I look at that photo, which was that was probably 1986, maybe 87. But every time I look at that photo, immediately I'm like, God, I wish I could go back to that same day and do everything the same right to here. Then I smile because I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool that I can say that. And I'm sure everybody else looks at that and they're like, they want to be that person too, because I don't know, there's something cool about it. Number one, that's a true trout bum there. And when I say true, I mean that guy's not going to go shower up the hotel the next night. That guy's going to do it night after night after night after night. The cold doesn't matter. The rain doesn't matter. What matters is getting the fly in the water and being right there where it's about to happen again the next day. So I love that shot too.
Well, after all these decades of angling and travel in the world, what's motivating Jeff Currier these days? I mean, going back to that Andy Anderson photo, one of the things that make those young years great is you just love fly fishing so much. You're so excited about it. Like you said, you can't get back out onto the water the next morning soon enough. It's this burning passion that when you first find your way to fly fishing as a young person, and you just breathe it all in, and it consumes you. 40 years later, do you still have that burning passion for the sport? And what is it that's motivating Jeff Currier these days?
I think that, the passion like I had that day in the frozen sleeping bag to go fish Hebgen Lake, that's where that was, is not as strong. If I wake up and I want to roll over a couple of times, I'm probably going to. But I still have places that I just, like if I'm in the Seychelles, I'm going to be, waking up at 4 wishing it was time to go. I also get really excited about competition. People are down on competition. I did it. I was invited to go on a lot of free trips to Europe when I was in my 20s, and now it's escalated. But I love, fishing in the World Championships. That's because I got to prove that I can fish well that day. It's kind of cool. And also I love sharing what I've learned. I just did the Denver show, this past weekend. I get worked to death. You were right across from me. We didn't even get to say hi. And there's something gratifying in that, because I talked to, hundreds, maybe it was thousands of people, and answered their questions, and hopefully helped them out so they can catch more fish. I like to help people catch fish.
Well, and this is a sport that needs it. It's not an easy sport to pick up on your own, and you need that, those teachers and those educators and those mentors to bring you along and keep you engaged. There's no doubt about it. Well, Jeff, where can people see more of your work, read your blog, find out what you're up to, where your last trip is, what your next trip on the books is looking like? Well,
no doubt my website is the best. It's just simply jeffcurrier.com. And probably the best way to get started on my website is just follow my blog. In 2009, I started my blog because the guy that was helping me with my website said, you need a blog. It was October 2009. And I was like, geez, I don't want to write every day about every day of fishing, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, well, you're going to. And it was hard. It was really hard. But now I look back, I've got 10 years of every single day of fishing that I've done and fully documented. Writing is easy for me now. I can whip out an essay and with photos and, an hour and a half. And I actually now I enjoy it because I'm kind of reliving what I just did.
Well, and it's a phenomenal resource. For those that haven't checked it out, there's not too many places that you can fish in the world that A, you haven't been, and B, you haven't written about. And so it's become this great kind of research tool for people that are thinking about a crazy trip to Africa or a quick flats trip to Belize or wherever it may be. There's a lot of good information on there.
Yeah, you Google any country if you're going there, and chances are that the first couple there is going to be a trip that I did myself or with you or with my wife.
Well, this has been great, Jeff, and I can't tell you much. We appreciate you sitting down and talking to us on Waypoints. Will you come back and do a part 2 with us?
Heck yeah.
Good, because we got a lot more to talk about. I know that our listeners would love to hear more of the stories. We didn't even touch on the crazy stories. Being stalked by a tiger in India, robbed in Nicaragua, stranded in the Seychelles. You've got a lot of adventures that we can really dive into, and almost each one of those is an episode in and of itself, but so many great stories to tell.
Yeah, I look forward to telling them. It's definitely kind of fun to be here with you guys today.
Well, you're a great ambassador for the sport, and we appreciate you sitting down with us.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this episode of Waypoints, the podcast that is 100% dedicated to travel, adventure, and exploration. Be sure to visit yellowdogflyfishing.com to plan and research your next fishing trip. Sign up for newsletters and new podcasts, and stay up to date on the latest travel news and developments. Join us for our next episode of Waypoints, and remember, life is short, and no one ever regretted a life of adventure.
This has been another episode of Waypoints, the podcast of fly fishing travel and adventure angling. Thank you for joining us, and be sure to visit yellowdogflyfishing.com for more trip updates, travel news, expert advice, and adventure profiles.